The waves lapped gently against the shore, the morning sun casting a golden hue over the otherwise quiet stretch of coastline in British Columbia. It should have been just another peaceful day. But then came the shoes. One shoe. Then another. Then 15 more. All scattered along the beach. All containing human feet, cleanly severed, some still in socks. But no bodies, no blood, and no trace of a struggle. By the time the local police arrived, horrified beachgoers had already snapped photos and posted them online, sending the small seaside community into a frenzy and setting off a media firestorm. Who did the feet belong to? Why were they turning up here, and where were the rest of the bodies? It wasn't just a one-time horror. Over the next few years, more feet would wash ashore, always in running shoes, always without a matching body. Locals began to whisper about a serial killer, organ trafficking rings, even supernatural forces. But the truth, when it finally surfaced, was more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. The first shoe was discovered on August 20, 2007, by a young girl exploring the shoreline of Jedediah Island with her father. At first glance, it looked like someone had carelessly discarded an old sneaker. But when the girl nudged it with a stick, it tipped over, and something pale, flesh-like, and unmistakably human slid partway out of the opening. A foot, severed cleanly at the ankle, still laced into a size 12 men's running shoe. Police were baffled. The shoe had clearly been in the water for some time, but the foot inside was strangely well preserved. It was almost as if it had been protected, floating in a kind of gruesome time capsule. Then just 6 days later, another foot appeared, this time on Gabriola Island, only 30 miles away. Different shoe, different foot, but the same unsettling condition. What began as a bizarre one-off discovery suddenly started to feel like a pattern. And then came more. By the end of 2008, 5 severed feet had washed ashore on various beaches around the Salish Sea. They were found in popular hiking areas, secluded coves, and even along rocky, inaccessible inlets. No 2 feet were ever found together, no matching pairs, just single shoes, eerily intact, resting on the pebbled sands as though deliberately placed. The coroner's office began its work. DNA testing slowly linked some of the feet to missing persons reports. But here's where it got stranger. Many of the victims had never been suspected to be missing under foul play. Some were known to have struggled with mental illness. Others had disappeared during boating trips, their remains never recovered, until now. Still, questions swirled. Why only the feet? Why only sneakers? And why were they all turning up in this one eerie stretch of coast? What no one realized yet was that nature itself might be orchestrating this chilling mystery, but even that explanation would raise more questions than it answered. Detective Sergeant Olivia Hart had seen plenty during her 15 years with the Vancouver Police Department, but the case now dubbed the Foot Mystery was unlike anything she'd encountered. There were no witnesses, no crime scenes, no suspects, just feet, detached, drifting, and eerily consistent in their condition. Her first visit to the coroner's office was surreal. She stood staring at a long steel table lined with sneakers, each tagged and carefully preserved in evidence bags. The human remains inside them told stories, but they were missing far too many chapters. The first thing investigators did was check for foul play. Was someone cutting off feet and dumping them in the water? That idea was quickly complicated by a forensic finding. The feet weren't hacked or sawn off. In most cases, the tissue had naturally separated at the ankle joint, what scientists called disarticulation. It happens in water, especially when shoes act like protective containers, keeping the foot preserved while the rest of the body decomposes or is consumed by marine life. In other words, these weren't necessarily murders. But they weren't exactly accidents either. What about the shoes? Most of the sneakers were high-quality brands, Nike, New Balance, Adidas, made with foam and rubber soles. Forensic oceanographers determined that these materials made the shoes highly buoyant, allowing them to float for long distances. Add to that the swirling currents of the Pacific Northwest, and it suddenly became plausible that feet could drift for miles before washing up on these shores. But something didn't add up. Why only now? Why weren't feet washing up in the 90s or early 2000s? Had something changed? One theory was disturbing. The tsunami that devastated parts of Asia in 2004 had dragged thousands of people out to sea. Could these feet be coming from that disaster, carried across the ocean by currents? But DNA testing began to rule that out. The victims were local, Canadian. In some cases, they had been reported missing just months before. Hart's gut told her this wasn't just a tragic coincidence of nature. Something about it felt curated, as if someone was watching, waiting, placing them just so. Then came a breakthrough, but not the kind she wanted. A local prankster came forward, claiming to have planted a fake foot in a sneaker to stir up media frenzy. It had worked, and it shook public confidence in the investigation. The hoax was exposed quickly, but it opened the floodgates for conspiracy theories, serial killers, organ traffickers, occult symbolism, and even government cover-ups. For Detective Hart, it made the search for truth even harder. What she needed now was a pattern, a timeline, a thread to pull, something that would lead her to the source. She had no idea that the next foot, found by a fisherman near Whidbey Island, would bring that thread, and it would unravel everything they thought they knew about the case. The 11th foot surfaced on a gray morning just off the coast of Whidbey Island, Washington. A local fisherman spotted a blue Nike sneaker bobbing near a cluster of seaweed and assumed it was trash. But when he lifted it from the water, the weight told him otherwise. Inside was a human foot, well preserved, laced tightly, and once again severed cleanly at the ankle joint. News broke fast. Another foot. Another wave of panic. The map of foot discoveries now stretched along hundreds of miles of coastline from British Columbia to Puget Sound. Detective Hart stood in front of the wall she'd turned into a timeline, a dense scatter of red pins, dates, and photos. She stared hard, willing a connection to leap out. And then something clicked. All of the confirmed feet were wearing similar types of running shoes released between 2004 and 2008. The design materials, particularly the air-injected soles, were known to be buoyant. What's more, these shoes had only gained popularity in the Pacific Northwest in recent years. That narrowed the timeline. But it wasn't just the footwear. Hart started to see something else. Victim profiles. Most of the feet, when matched to DNA records, came from people reported missing near coastal areas. Many with histories of mental health issues, substance abuse, or homelessness. People who had slipped through the cracks of society. Some had been presumed drowned in accidents or suicides. The evidence began leaning in an uncomfortable direction. Perhaps these were not murders at all, but tragic losses. People who had taken their own lives or accidentally drowned, their bodies disintegrated by time and tide, leaving only the protected feet behind. But Hart wasn't convinced that ruled out all foul play. One foot, recovered from a beach near Port Moody, didn't match any missing person report. No DNA matches. No local leads. The shoe model was different, older, worn, not like the others. That outlier stuck with her. And then, another twist. A young man named Alex Carrington contacted the department after seeing a photo of one of the shoes on the news. He swore it looked exactly like the pair his brother, Jeremy, had been wearing the night he disappeared in 2007. Jeremy had struggled with depression, and his family always feared the worst. But no foot had ever been connected to him until now. Forensics confirmed the match. Suddenly, Jeremy's foot wasn't just another tragedy, it was a potential key to understanding how these deaths connected. His case had never been closed. There was no suicide note. No witnesses. Just an empty car parked near the edge of a rocky cliff. But Alex revealed something else. Something he hadn't told police back then. Jeremy had been getting strange messages from someone he met in an online forum just weeks before he vanished. Dark messages. Encouragement to let go and find peace in the sea. Detective Hart's pulse quickened. If someone had been coaching vulnerable individuals toward suicide, was this just a string of tragic drownings, or something far more sinister? The investigation took a darker turn as Detective Hart examined the growing collection of recovered feet. It was impossible to ignore the eerie pattern emerging. These weren't just tragic accidents or suicides. Something far more calculated seemed to be at play. Each victim had gone missing without a trace, their disappearances marked by strange details, disconnected from the usual patterns of local drownings or suicides. A chilling thought began to settle in Hart's mind. Was there someone out there targeting vulnerable people along the coast? A predator who knew how to exploit the most fragile moments of their lives, pushing them over the edge, literally and figuratively. Hart dug deeper into the online forums where Alex Carrington claimed his brother Jeremy had interacted. The chilling messages, full of dark encouragement, matched others from forums that had been flagged years ago by mental health professionals as dangerous. The forum, known only as Shrouded Waters, was a breeding ground for despair. Individuals shared their deepest struggles with depression, loneliness, and suicidal thoughts. But the messages from certain members weren't just comforting those in pain, they were exploiting them, encouraging them to disappear, find peace beneath the waves, and leave it all behind. Hart shivered as she read through the messages, some of which mentioned specific locations, secluded beaches and rocky cliffs along the Pacific Northwest coast. It was as if the perpetrator had been guiding these people to their deaths, one cryptic message at a time. Detective Hart reached out to a cybersecurity expert, hoping to track down the source of the Shrouded Waters forum. After weeks of digital digging, the expert uncovered something chilling. The messages were coming from a single IP address that had been bouncing across several regions. It was an anonymous user who seemed to be using virtual private networks to cover their tracks. But Hart now had a lead, a shadowy figure lurking in the darkest corners of the internet. Then came the breakthrough. A break in the case arrived when a local beachgoer stumbled upon a bizarre piece of evidence, a notebook half buried in the sand near the shore. When forensic experts examined it, they discovered the notebook was filled with detailed notes on the victims, including their names, locations, and the exact types of shoes they wore before they vanished. The disturbing part? The notes also included specific dates and descriptions of how each victim would end up washed away, almost like a twisted countdown. Hart's heart raced as she realized the killer, or killers, had been carefully planning these disappearances for years. They weren't just opportunistic, they were strategic. They were watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. With the notebook as the only solid lead, Hart's team dug into the victims' pasts, searching for a connection to anyone who might have been involved with the dark forum. And then a breakthrough came. One victim's name appeared in a strange financial transaction record. A money transfer to an account tied to an unassuming local resident, a man named Michael Edwards, known in town as a quiet, friendly neighbor. But behind his mild-mannered exterior lay something far more disturbing. Detective Hart couldn't shake the unease as she stared at the financial transaction records. Michael Edwards? How could someone so unremarkable be connected to such a horrifying web of manipulation? But when Hart's team traced the money transfer back to Edwards, they discovered something even more shocking. Edwards wasn't just a passerby in this case. He was at the center of a twisted scheme, and the more they dug, the more his involvement became impossible to ignore. The financial trail led to a set of chilling purchases: prepaid phone cards, anonymous accounts, and, most disturbingly, several high-end camping supplies, all purchased from local stores near the beaches where the bodies had been found. Edwards had been preparing for something long before the first victim ever disappeared. A visit to his home revealed a dark and quiet life, a man who appeared harmless to everyone who knew him. But Hart's instincts told her something was off. There was an overwhelming sense of isolation, a loneliness in the air. When investigators scoured his house, they uncovered a hidden room in the back, locked and camouflaged by shelving units. Inside they found dozens of notebooks filled with detailed drawings of beaches, cliffs, and, most horrifyingly, images of people tied and restrained. These weren't random sketches, they were carefully crafted plans. Edwards had been stalking the victims before they even knew they were being watched. Each drawing showed precise locations where the bodies had been found, and each image of the victims was eerily accurate, showing them in poses that mirrored the final moments of their lives. But that wasn't all. In the corner of one notebook, there was a name scrawled over and over again: Alex Carrington. Detective Hart's stomach churned. Could Carrington have known Edwards? Had their twisted connection been more than just an online forum? Edwards had clearly been obsessed with the idea of control and manipulation. But why Alex? Why this specific person? And, more chillingly, had Edwards influenced him to carry out these murders? Or was it the other way around? The pieces were beginning to fall into place, but they were still scattered, fragmented. Edwards was the key, but his role in this macabre tale remained unclear. Was he the mastermind, or had he been manipulated by someone else? The investigation intensified, but just as the detectives were closing in on Edwards, a new development sent shockwaves through the team. The body of a new victim, another young woman, had been discovered along a remote stretch of beach with no shoes, just like the others. But this time something was different. The woman was clutching a small, blood-soaked notebook in her hand, identical to the one found earlier. Her name was Emma Riley, and in the margins of the notebook she had written a message that sent chills down Hart's spine. It was Michael. He told me I'd be free. But now I know the truth. There's no way out. There's only the sea. Hart's breath caught in her throat as she read the note over and over. Michael Edwards wasn't working alone. Detective Hart couldn't believe what she had just read. Michael Edwards wasn't just a local loner with a twisted obsession. He was part of a far darker, far more dangerous network. The note Emma Riley had clutched in her hand confirmed it. Edwards wasn't operating alone. The connection between him and this new victim wasn't random, it was orchestrated. Hart knew that everything she had uncovered so far was only the surface of a far more chilling conspiracy. The discovery of the notebook had also raised new questions. If Edwards wasn't the only one involved in these brutal acts, Who else was out there? Could it be that the notorious Alex Carrington was the true architect of these killings? Was Edwards just a pawn in a game that had escalated far beyond anyone's imagination? Hart's team immediately refocused their investigation on Carrington. The name had appeared in multiple places now, from Edwards' notebooks to Emma's final note, and even to other anonymous online posts, all suggesting that this shadowy figure was the mastermind pulling the strings. Carrington was a figure shrouded in mystery, almost like a ghost. Despite their best efforts, investigators had been unable to trace Carrington's true identity. Online profiles led to dead ends, and no one in the physical world seemed to know much about him, except for his supposed expertise in hacking and digital manipulation. It was clear, Carrington was elusive, skilled, and above all dangerous. As Detective Hart delved deeper into the online forum, she found more unsettling connections. There were dozens of users who had interacted with Carrington, many of whom seemed to disappear just as quickly as they had come into the picture. Some of these people were known to be in contact with Edwards, but others had no clear connection to the case, or so it seemed. The more Hart investigated, the more she began to see the chilling extent of Carrington's influence. He was a master of deception, controlling his followers through online manipulation. Hart learned that many of Carrington's followers had become addicted to his web of lies, convinced that they were part of a larger, almost cult-like community. Carrington's words, laced with psychological manipulation, had given these individuals the belief that they were chosen, that they were destined to carry out these heinous acts. But Hart was about to uncover something even more terrifying. After further analysis of the digital trail, investigators found an encrypted message, buried deep within a forum thread where Carrington had been active. The message was a set of coordinates, specific locations along the coastline that had been previously untouched. The coordinates led to an isolated part of the coast, a stretch of rocky cliffs that no one would have dared to explore, not even the most experienced hikers. It was clear now, Carrington had planned to continue his deadly spree. His followers were meant to help him, to fuel his twisted narrative. With the clock ticking, Hart knew she had to act fast. She assembled a team and made her way to the cliffs. As they neared the coordinates, they found a series of makeshift camps, campers, tents, and even a few empty chairs around a fire pit, all eerily abandoned. But it wasn't just the remnants of campers that caught Hart's attention. In the center of the campsite there was a large, makeshift memorial. It was filled with photographs, images of people, victims who had been lost to the sea, faces staring back at her in frozen fear. Some were familiar, others were strangers, but all of them were tied together by one thing: Carrington's manipulation. A hidden compartment beneath the memorial revealed something far more disturbing: notes, photographs, and sketches that showed the same victims, all lined up in a meticulous sequence as if to mark them for death. It was chilling. Carrington had planned these murders in advance, premeditated and precise. Each victim's demise was orchestrated as part of a twisted ritual, with no real purpose other than to feed Carrington's delusions. Hart's pulse quickened as the team scoured the area for any sign of Carrington. But as they reached the final section of the campsite, they found something that made their blood run cold: Carrington himself. He was standing at the edge of the cliff, a silhouette against the gray sky, staring out at the endless expanse of water. Before Hart could react, Carrington turned to face them, his expression unnervingly calm. The hunt was over, but Carrington's twisted game had only just begun. Detective Hart's heart raced as she locked eyes with Carrington. For a moment it felt like time had stopped. The wind whipped around them, the only sound the crashing waves below. He was standing at the edge of the cliff, his arms at his sides as though he were waiting for something, waiting for them. "Detective Hart," Carrington said softly, his voice eerie in its calmness. "I've been expecting you." His words sent a shiver down Hart's spine. The man in front of her was the embodiment of everything she had feared, a predator who had manipulated countless lives. But now, with him standing so close, she realized something even darker. He wasn't just dangerous. He was a mind bent on control, a puppeteer who pulled strings from the shadows. Carrington's eyes glinted with a kind of madness that unsettled her to her core. "How long, Carrington?" Hart asked, trying to steady her breath. "How long have you been planning this? All the deaths, all the lives you've destroyed." Carrington's lips curled into a twisted smile. "Longer than you can imagine. This," he gestured broadly, encompassing the cliff, the coastline, the very air around them, "this is just the beginning. You have no idea how many of them there are, detective. How many people out there who are waiting for their turn." A chill ran down Hart's spine. She had always known that Carrington was a mastermind, But hearing him speak with such certainty, with such conviction, it was clear. He wasn't just a killer. He was a harbinger, someone who thrived on chaos, on the unraveling of lives, on the creation of destruction. And worse, he had followers. "You're insane," Hart said, her voice cold. "You've destroyed so many lives, so many families, and for what? For a sick game? For control?" Carrington's expression hardened, and he took a slow step closer to the edge. "You still don't understand, do you, detective? This isn't a game. This is destiny. I am not the one who created this chaos. It was always here. You just haven't seen it. People like you, like Emma, they're all part of it. They're all part of what's been building for years." Hart swallowed hard, trying to process his words. "What are you talking about? You're a murderer, a manipulator. You took innocent lives." Carrington laughed softly, his laugh echoing off the cliffs. "Innocent? No. Everyone is guilty, detective. Everyone is guilty of something. They just don't realize it yet. My job, my purpose was to show them that. I'm not the villain. I'm the truth they refuse to see." Hart's mind was racing. This wasn't just about the murders anymore. This was about something far more insidious. Carrington believed he was some sort of savior, revealing hidden truths to a world that didn't want to face them. His mind had twisted reality beyond recognition. Before she could speak again, Carrington stepped backward, dangerously close to the cliff's edge. "You'll never understand, Hart. You're too focused on finding the right answers. But there are no answers. Only chaos. Only the next victim." Hart's instinct screamed at her. She had to stop him. But he was so close to the edge now, and with the wind howling, she knew one wrong move could send him over the side. "You don't have to do this," Hart said, her voice steady but desperate. "You can stop. I can help you. This isn't you." Carrington turned to face her fully, his eyes burning with a cold intensity. "No, detective. This is me." With that, he turned away again, staring out into the abyss. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, without warning, Carrington took one final step back. Hart's breath caught in her throat as she lunged forward, her hand outstretched, but it was too late. Carrington's body fell backward into the churning sea below, swallowed up by the waves before Hart could reach him. She stood at the edge, heart pounding, staring into the empty space where he had been moments before. She had failed to stop him, but in that moment, it dawned on her. Carrington wasn't the real danger. He was only a symptom of something much darker, something that still lurked in the shadows. As Hart turned away, the weight of the case settled on her shoulders. She had solved the mystery, caught the killer, but the truth was far from over. The followers, the network, the twisted ideology Carrington had created, those were the real threats. And she knew deep down that the world hadn't seen the last of them. The mystery of the 17 shoes on the beach had been solved, but the real horror was far from over. Carrington's death was just the beginning of a new chapter in this chilling tale. Detective Hart knew the network Carrington had built was still out there, hidden, waiting to strike again. Thank you for watching this spine-chilling story. If you want to hear more true crime mysteries and follow cases like this one, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Stay safe, and remember, sometimes, the most terrifying truths are the ones hidden right in front of us.